India is digitizing faster than any other country except Indonesia. That's what McKinsey's analysis of 17 mature and emerging economies throws up. But our country's digital story is still in its infancy. India's digital score is low at 32 out of a score of 100. But by 2025, digital could transform India's economy sector by sector, and McKinsey expects we have the potential to be a truly connected nation by 2025. So let's find out Digital India 2025 according to McKinsey. Alok Kshirsagar, Senior Partner at McKinsey, and Madgavkar, Partner at McKinsey Global Institution, join in. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in. Alok, let me start with you. India's digital economy currently stands at $200 billion, 8% of the GDP. By 2025, what could that number look like?
That number could be north of $1 trillion. And a lot of that value, if you think about percentage of the economy, could be north of 15 to 20% of the economy. And to your point, we're in its infancy, right? We've now got nearly 600 million mobile internet subscribers. They're just starting to use the full power of their phones and the network to consume media, to consume news. But we're now starting to see a whole host of new services come through that. Over half of that, more than 500 billion, is going to come from new sectors. For example, healthcare, agriculture, financial services, transportation. So this is what's exciting. It's actually going to transform all of the economy beyond the IT services sector.
I'm actually surprised you use financial services. We thought fintech was driving the innovation for Digital India.
So fintech has actually done a lot in pockets, for example, in payments, of course, in wallet, and in some parts of online lending. But the real transformation is actually changing the way in which banks themselves interact with customers. So many banks are now using financial technologies, often in partnership with fintechs, to completely change loan approvals, to completely change the way in which customer interactions work. And we see still that in the infancy relative to, say, what you might get in Korea or Singapore.
Anu, this journey from $200 billion of a digital contribution to $1 trillion, what will be the key contributors?
So the composition of the 200 billion is very different from the composition of the 1 trillion. And as Alok said, it's a lot of the so-called real sectors, which till now haven't really experienced digitization through their supply chains, through their interactions with consumers, which will actually kick in. And that process will affect lots of parts of the economy which till now we haven't actually seen. Whether you think about the movement of goods, right? Movement of goods along roadways and railways. It feels like such a non-digital activity. But part of the 1 trillion, for example, is all of the savings and productivity gains in the logistics sector, which could unlock something like $50 to $70 billion of incremental value add by 2025. Another really important piece of this in financial services is as more and more businesses, large ones, but also millions of small ones, are engaging with consumers and with their own upstream and downstream supply chains through digital information, the use of that data to actually be able to lend to SMEs, to lend to micro vendors, to lend to consumers on the back of data is another very big piece of the $170 billion.
Do you want to put some numbers to the composition of $1 trillion in terms of digital economy?
So the $1 trillion will be roughly half from core digital sectors, where we include IT BPM, which roughly doubles in value from today. And we also include there the whole ecosystem for device manufacturing, because mobile handset manufacturing and other devices, and of course telecom and other digital communication. But the rest of it, which is roughly $450 to $500 billion of value, we see about 100 to 150 billion coming from all sorts of both government-led payments and services that, procurement services, direct benefit transfer types of things that actually save resources. We see labor markets, which is the ability to find jobs on digital platforms, actually bringing a lot more efficient labor into the market. And then we find about 170 billion coming from financial services. We find about 70 billion odd each coming from agriculture, from 50 to 70 billion from retail, from logistics. So each of these sectors is roughly $50 to $60 billion worth, and then financial services, of course, the largest at about 170 billion.
Actually, let me pick on agriculture, healthcare, retail, logistics, because these sectors traditionally have not had technology at the core. So let's talk about each of them in greater detail. Alok, in agriculture, where does digital kick in? Now, that's a very crucial sector. It accounts for, 40% of India's labor force?
Actually, it's already transforming the lives of farmers who are deploying this technology. So let me give it to you at each stage. Firstly, the ability to get weather and soil information on your mobile phone is helping farmers to understand where they should plant crops and when they should actually do so, right? The second thing is you're able to now to get precision agriculture inputs, for example, on what type of fertilizer to use, what type of inputs to use, and that's also driven off handheld devices that fertilizer salespeople are actually using in the field today. The third aspect is financial services. So when you now get credit, again, you have people with their handhelds going out into the field and being able to check what has actually happened to crop yields, what's likely to be the pricing pattern, and giving you a working capital loan ahead of time based on what you expect the crop pattern to be. And then, of course, with the link to the mandis, to the rural markets, you're now able to understand where do you get the best price for your produce. When you take that together, the farmers who are doing this today are already achieving 30+% improvement in yield and about 20 to 30% improvement in price. Right? This is an enormous opportunity to use data, to use handhelds both for themselves as well as the service providers for them, to transform the way in which they drive productivity. We're seeing that with tractor manufacturers, farm equipment players, who are now providing equipment with sensors on them that are telling you when you should repair them, how you should utilize them more effectively. So you have effectively, exactly to your point, a sector which you wouldn't have regarded as a digital sector, but with the availability of mobile phones, is transforming the way in which information and productivity works to improve their lives.
What about healthcare? India has too few doctors, not enough hospital beds. The government spend on healthcare is what, 1-2% of its overall GDP. It's important that we transform the healthcare sector.
So there is a dramatic transformation of the healthcare sector that's possible and actually unfolding as we speak, on the back of the much wider digital access and reach that we have, including in semi-urban and rural areas. One big manifestation of that is telemedicine. Some of the largest hospital chains are already notching up as many as 10 million remote consultations on a cumulative basis. So that's a staggering number. And if you overlay on this ability to reach a patient and have a specialist doctor talk to a patient in a remote location, if you add to that the digital enablement that an electronic health record offers, which means there is tremendous time saved. You know, when the doctor's actually interviewing you as a patient, they're not sort of going back to the drawing board and trying to ascertain all the facts from you. There's data out there, and it becomes a much more efficient process. So all of that can add not just billions of dollars. In the case of healthcare, the value is actually much more than that. It's really about patient experience. It's really about the ability to bring very scarce specialist resources to patients. And it's also, by the way, it will transform the nature of work that a doctor does. Today, micro-studies show that 30 to 40% of a doctor's time is actually spent in very routine activities, which might be just logging basic facts, writing out, prescriptions. If that's digitized, you actually have a lot more productive time released that the doctor can spend on truly improving diagnosis and improving what needs to be done.
Can I just build on that, Anu? I think there's an employment opportunity here too. Because what's now happening, and we're seeing this, by the way, in Andhra Pradesh and Bihar, in various rural parts of the country, is you're enabling healthcare workers. Because now with the combination of specialist support remotely and protocols on your handheld device, you're able to do, for example, maternal care, primary care, with people who are able to effectively follow the protocols without having to go through all of the medical training that you would have otherwise had to. So you're getting a whole series of new types of jobs occurring, just like we've seen in ride-hailing services for cars or for food delivery.
What about on retail? Because 80% of all retail outlets are currently the mom-and-pop stores.
Sure.
So there is clearly a big opportunity there.
So in retail, you're already seeing the impact of companies who are providing simple mobile-based, what you might call ERP systems for the small kirana store, right? So there are companies who are able to help those stores both manage their own logistics and actually effectively enable them to be a storefront for a whole range of e-commerce that goes through them. So there are companies, for example, that are enabling a small store in a small town, say Tumkur in Karnataka, that has access to 10,000 SKUs that they're able to deliver within 24 hours. So if you're a customer in Tumkur, you go to your trusted Kirana store, you tell the person, because there's a tablet there today, where you can click what you want, just like if you and I were shopping in Mumbai, and within 24 hours, they're able to deliver that to you. Now, because they have that level of transaction information, they're able to tie up both with the big consumer goods companies to say, hey, I can now give you access that cuts out 4 layers of distribution direct to the store, and I can tie up with the financial services companies because I can tell you what that store's actual transaction flow is, and as a result of which, get you credit and insurance in a way that you couldn't. It's happening today. So what we're excited about throughout this report is there's nothing here that's futuristic or theoretical. We've taken real-life examples. We've worked closely with companies across the sector. There are more than 50 CEOs who've been part of this, several NGOs, several research groups who've worked with us to identify real-life examples of the application of digital innovations. And so what we're really talking about is how do you scale this up? And that's what we're most excited about.